Chances are you've heard at least one of these clichéd questions during a job interview before. What is your greatest weakness? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why do you really want this job? And while you were job hunting, you probably had a really good canned response, right? My greatest weakness is my overwork ethic. I see myself moving up to more senior roles at this company in 5 years. This organization has values that align with my own. Let's be honest, those answers don't tell employers if you'll actually be a good fit for the job. Now think back. Are you guilty of asking potential employees those very same questions? As a manager, you're expected to build a great team, but the process is often messy, time-consuming, and full of guesswork. Resumes only tell part of the story. Interviews can be hit or miss, and even when you think you've nailed it, sometimes the people you hire just don't jive with your existing team. So how do you take some of that guesswork out of hiring? What systems can you put in place to consistently make better choices? How do you balance current skills and potential versus culture fit? And most importantly, how do you set yourself and your new hires up for long-term success? I'm Mandi Gosling, host of Manage This, a series for everyone playing manager in the middle. Each episode, we help managers tackle everyday problems that seem to pop up when you're both leading a team and being managed in return. This is Beyond the Interview, How to Hire More Effectively. I chatted with Richard Davis, CEO of recruiting and executive coaching firm Kilberry, and an executive in residence here at the Rotman School of Management. As a recruiter and an organizational psychologist, he's made an entire career out of interviewing people. And in his expert opinion, managers are simply not preparing enough for hiring.
Speed seems to always be the order of the day, and that's actually can get in the way of hiring the right person. And in the end, it's wholly inefficient because you have to go back to the drawing board.
And look, we get it. You're managing a whole team. That means juggling approvals, vacation requests, and interpersonal conflicts, not to mention demands from senior leadership and, your actual job. Oh, and you have to fill a vacant role, which usually means someone left the team and everyone else has to pick up the slack. You're busy, but you really need to make sure you're getting the right people onto your team.
There's the economic risk of hiring the wrong person and having to go through the entire process again. It's expensive. If you're hiring a recruiting firm, a search firm, it gets very expensive. Then there's the cultural and business costs of bringing in the wrong people, the people that are not actually able to do their jobs and able to do them well. It's a reflection of your own leadership if you are bringing on the wrong people that just don't seem to stick or are not successful. So there's a huge cost to getting it wrong. Is why people should be investing time and resources to get the selection process right.
One UK study estimates that replacing a bad hire at the mid-seniority level can cost a business upwards of £132,000 thanks to the cost of the initial recruitment, training, and onboarding, and lost wages. That doesn't even take into account the potential risk to team morale and overall productivity when you add someone who really isn't the right fit. And amid AI infiltrating the hiring process, from AIs conducting interviews to candidates using AI to feed them answers, well, in Richard's view, it's more important than ever that we get better at the interviewing process.
We could get to that point, which all, of course, takes out the humanity out of all this. I don't like the idea of delegating interviewing beyond sort of basic screening to AI. I think it should be a human exercise.
So how do you even get better at hiring someone? Well, the first step is to recognize most of the work actually happens before you even sit down with a candidate.
There's a missing step that often happens or doesn't end up happening, which is establishing the success criteria. It is critical before you even think about candidates. So that requires sort of hard thinking about what are the competencies and the dispositional factors related often to the culture of the organization that are required in a particular role. When you do that, when you do it properly, you're in a much better position to evaluate against those criteria. Otherwise, you're, like many of us have been in interview situations where they're just kind of trying to get to know you rather than determining whether you are a good fit for a particular role in a particular organization at this moment in time.
This is more than just has strong communication skills or needs experience in coding, though those are skills that are important to consider as well. This is thinking through all the different ways someone will be/can be successful in their jobs and at the company more broadly.
It's important to understand in your organization what makes someone successful. And you can kind of flip it around and think about where do people flame out or where do they get rejected by this system. But really pay attention to those nuances of character and personality and disposition that make someone successful or not. That's critical.
Are the people who are successful at your work flexible, confident, extroverted, disciplined? Do the people who end up quitting or moving on quickly have something in common? Maybe they were all overly ambitious or too creative, or maybe they were too rigid or not rigid enough. Be honest and don't idealize your company.
I have one client that, let me put it this way, thick skin is required. You have to be able to have courage in communications and be able to stand on your own 2 feet. If they don't have sort of thick skin and they're sensitive, they just won't fit in the environment. They won't be successful.
If you need someone who's going to do well under tight deadlines that regularly shift, then think about what is it about their personality that would make them a really good fit. If you work for a startup and need people willing to commit to working long, flexible hours, put it on paper. Or maybe on the other end, you need someone with infinite patience to deal with various levels of slow bureaucracy. Then write that down. Next, it's time to come up with a list of questions that'll help tease out those skills, behaviors, and personality traits that you've identified.
The science, industrial organizational psychology, the research has long supported the notion of structured or semi-structured interviews, so that you go into an interview asking the same or roughly the same questions that you'll ask each candidate. And that way you'll be able to compare responses.
So don't assume you can ask each candidate unique questions on their background. I mean, that's not to say you can't probe or follow up. That's something we'll actually talk about in a moment. But to get the best candidates, look for a relatively consistent question matrix to evaluate everyone against. This is also your opportunity to figure out if you need a test component to accurately identify the technical skills you might need, like a writing test for a communicator or a coding test for a programmer. As for the questions themselves, you're looking for a mix that will help you determine if their skills and personality match the job description and success criteria you ID'd earlier. To get a sense of whether they have the skills or the right behavior, you'll probably ask some familiar questions.
They often start with, tell me a time in which you had a challenge you had to overcome. And then you need to follow that up with, what was the situation? How did you work through that situation? And what was the outcome?
Richard suggests mixing these types of questions with a handful of dispositional ones, questions that will tease out a person's personality.
There are 5 basic personality traits that have been well studied. They're often called the Big Five. It's emotionality, extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, and conscientiousness.
How would you measure someone's conscientiousness, for example?
Conscientiousness is the extent to which someone is dispositionally organized, disciplined, structured, process-oriented. Do they follow up on details? Are they sort of on the ball like I described? And there are questions that one can ask to determine that. Like one example I like to use, it's more of a lighthearted kind of question, but is determinative in some way. If you're going on a vacation, do you typically have an itinerary for that? Or do you like to spontaneously go with the flow? And again, there's sort of the obvious answer to that. And then you probe. And then you say, tell me more about that.
Once you know what personality traits you're looking to measure against, there are plenty of resources online to help you probe for that specific trait. Richard even has a book all about asking questions that help you understand people's personality. We'll drop a link in the bio if you want to pick it up from your local library or bookstore. And finally, identify some of those gimme questions. And here, it's totally fine to embrace some of those cliches we mentioned earlier, because they're serving a specific purpose.
Some questions are okay just to build rapport. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Interviewees have prepared for that question a million times over. They probably have been coached upon about their responses to that. It's okay to get them comfortable. Let them get out what they prepared to get out. They came into that thinking you're probably going to ask that, so give that to them. And then once you've sort of you pass those basic questions, then get into the real stuff.
Creating that comfortable environment during the interview is step 3.
And that means if in person, should be a bright room with a window, ideally, and also taking the first bit of time to build chemistry, and it's okay to reveal something of yourself. People will reveal themselves and their capabilities and their personality the more comfortable they are.
Small talk's important here. Have any fun plans this summer? What's that photo behind you? See any cool concerts recently?
Another thing that I suggest for interviewers is to find connection points. So it's okay to give a little bit of yourself and to do a little bit of self-revealing. It doesn't have to be such a one-way interrogation, because that will feel awkward and intense. So open up, reveal something of yourself, comment on what's going on in the world or otherwise.
Once the interview gets going, it's time to engage in some active listening.
I often see interviewers, particularly in early stages of interviewing other people, they get better at this over time, but they tend to talk too much. They tend to focus the interview on what they need to say or even questions they need to get out, rather than asking a good question, stopping and listening, and then probing.
Follow-up questions are crucial to getting real insights into people. In fact, one of the most common mistakes Richard sees is
asking questions and then not asking follow-up questions, almost as if you have a list of these questions to ask. You're kind of going through each one and doing a check mark. Some of them may be very good questions, but if you're not asking follow-up questions, you're really hearing what the person wants to tell you rather than the real nature of who they are. If you ask someone to explain a situation where they were under stress and how they dealt with that stress, they may come up with a good example. Don't just stop there and move on to the next question. Ask them to explain it a little bit more. Be curious and ask them to help you understand what they were thinking in the moment, what other challenges were out there.
Finally, it's time to evaluate your candidates. Maybe one stands far and above the others, hits all the right personality markers you're looking for, is perfectly skilled, and would be a wonderful addition to your team. Great! You found the candidate equivalent of a unicorn. Most of the time, you're going to have to find someone who checks most of your boxes. Would you ever settle for a less than perfect candidate?
Early in my career, I would have answered that. No, you should never settle. You should keep on going out there in the marketplace. In the couple of decades I've been doing this, there are some situations where settling is actually required. That's the honest answer.
So now's your opportunity to figure out what you're willing and not willing to settle on.
There's certain attributes of people that I would never settle on, and that includes things like integrity, because you're just opening up yourself to all kinds of problems. So never settle if there are indications that there's an issue with integrity on a candidate. There are, of course, particular jobs where I would never settle either. Perfectionism is not necessarily a great thing overall. There are all kinds of reasons why it's not great. But for some jobs, for my accountant and for maybe a heart surgeon or something like that, I want that person to be a perfectionist. So I'm not going to settle on the experience for that. There are some jobs that deep accuracy, you cannot settle on something like that.
And if you're still stuck between two candidates and you have the luxury of time, it's worth asking yourself if there's any additional information or insights from these two or maybe more candidates that would help you make a decision. If they didn't do a skills test, maybe now's the time. But at the end of the day,
it requires your judgment. We all live and die in the workplace by our ability to evaluate people and predict their capability to do what we need them to do. So this is a leadership task, and you have to kind of step into that.
And what happens if you make a mistake and end up hiring the wrong person? Well, that's step 6. Evaluating what you got right, what you got wrong, and what you can learn from all of it.
too many people don't sort of step back and reflect on, when I got it wrong, what was it that I got wrong? And when you're asking yourself that question, what did I get wrong? Or what did I learn from this? It often leads to the conversation and deeper understanding of one's biases. We all have biases. Some of them are more unfortunate than others, but we all have them. For example, you default to hiring people like you. And so understanding your own biases, including all kinds of other things that you may not want to think about, where you are biased, is critical to getting it right better in the future. Your critical task is understanding yourself and understanding the other person, and basing that understanding on set criteria of what is required in a particular role is perhaps the most critical tool you have in order to get it right. Don't just evaluate people on arbitrary, generic kinds of things. Find the right questions that will help you evaluate that. Know your biases, make the person feel comfortable, and go for it.
So, will you reflect on your own hiring biases? Is it time for you to ditch the "what's your greatest weakness" question? Got any other topics you'd like us to cover? Chime in the comments and consider subscribing to this series, or our whole YouTube channel, or the Rotman Insights Hub. Just click the link in the description to get more thought leadership and research-backed management tips from the Rotman community delivered to your inbox every other week. Thanks for watching.